If it weren't for two Hutt Valley firefighters, Ally Maclachlan wouldn't have walked down the aisle in May. Daniel Olliver and Scott Duganzich shielded Miss Maclachlan from falling debris on a cliff face, saving her life. Today they were given a citation for their work. Ben Strang reports.
When Matt Haynes brought his partner, Ally Maclachlan, home to New Zealand, he planned to end the trip with a proposal. He wanted to marry her and was patiently waiting to pop the question. But Ally Maclachlan says on September 6th of last year, his proposal plans were shattered during a trip to Percy's Reserve in Lower Hutt.
We had no idea that we were on the top of a cliff, but I guess I stepped backwards to turn around. I stepped on what I thought was grass, but it was actually growing straight on the cliff. I lost my footing and fell over. And even when I fell over, I still had no idea that I'd fallen down a cliff. So a few minutes into it, I just obviously kept falling and rolling and rolling and rolling. And then thought, well, I might be losing my life now.
Firefighters were called to the reserve at about 5 p.m. and were told someone was stuck in a tree. What greeted them was Mrs. Maclachlan, 7 metres down a cliff face, balancing precariously on a small branch with a further 20-metre drop threatening below. Senior firefighter Daniel Olliver was one of the first on the scene.
Tried to make access with the gear we had, which wasn't probably the right gear to use, but we used what we had and made access down to her, down a 10-metre cliff face, and secured her the best we could with what we had and waited for rescue from everyone else.
When a second crew arrived, Scott Duganzich was tasked with helping Mr. Olliver. He free-climbed across the dangerous cliff and tied ropes around Mrs. Maclachlan to stop her from falling as they waited for a rescue helicopter.
When I got there, she was just constantly screaming, "I can't hold on any longer." So I didn't want to stand around while seeing her fall, so I made my way across.
Mr. Olliver says things then got worse.
The helicopter would have been there within the hour, and once they came in quite close, it dislodged a lot of trees and rocks from above us, which hit all of us, the patient, Scotty and me. It was one of the scariest moments of my life, to be honest. But yeah, luckily I was wearing my helmet and it probably saved my life. She was wearing a smaller helmet, which broke as well. So
she was virtually unconscious
yeah,
from the point.
So after the rocks fell, I was having to hold her up while she was unconscious, and then she was much worse after the rockfall stopped.
Mr. Olliver was concussed by one of the falling rocks, but it was Mrs. Maclachlan who suffered most. She suffered a skull fracture and her brain was bleeding. Spine, rib and hip fractures were also of concern, and she could only move one arm. But after a 5-hour wait, she was carried to safety. The accident meant Mr. Haynes didn't get to end his trip home with a proposal, but he did make the move a couple of months later.
There's not really words to thank someone enough for helping to save your life. I think about them all the time, especially on my wedding day, leading up to my wedding. You know, I was just so grateful to think that, you know, I was able to, I guess, have the best day of my life and marry the person that I love, knowing that I wouldn't have been able to do that and walk down the aisle if they weren't there for me that day.
Fire and Emergency Chairman Paul Swain gave the firefighters their citation and says it's a rare honour. It's only the second time a citation has been awarded in the past 2 years. For Checkpoint, this is Ben Strang.